actually have a resource that when you get the pot of gold, it's in there. It's the 10-minute guide to profitable content. And so it walks you through like kind of that matrix of doing, 10 topics that you want to be known for, or that you think your audience should know. And then 10 subtopics under that. And that's 100 ideas.
I knew I wanted to talk to Kronda Adair the moment that I saw this amazing product that she created called the Pot of Gold Content Marketing Database. It is brilliant. And it's something that I actually was dreaming about way back in 2016 when I wrote my book, Master Content Marketing. And I'm so grateful that Kronda is here with us today. I sent her this really weird fangirl note and said, you created the product that I had been dreaming about, and it is amazing. So Kronda does a lot more than content marketing help and deep thinking about how to best use content marketing in her business. But that's kind of the topic that we're going to do a deep dive on today. My name is Pamela Wilson, and I coach people in mid-career to build profitable online businesses. And this is another episode of the Online Business Expert Series. And I am thrilled to have Kronda here with us today. So, I dreamt up this solution and you actually built it. And that's what I want to talk about. But you are the founder of Carvel Digital, and that is an agency that helps mission-driven, service-based businesses to automate their marketing and create predictable sales using a pipeline that just works. So what I want to talk about is, this whole idea of using content as an asset is so important, but I want to start out by asking you how you define content marketing and how that's different than content creation, because I think that sometimes gets mixed up in people's minds.
Oh, yeah. So the way that I typically explain content marketing to folks who are not in the marketing sphere is that content marketing is television. Right? Because television was invented to sell things, right? But you need to get the eyeballs, right? And so what I read, I don't know if it's true or not, was that soap operas were created to sell, like laundry soap or whatever to housewives. And so if you think about it that way, your content is the entertaining or useful stuff that gets the eyeballs, like that gets people's attention. And then the marketing is you using their attention to present your offer. And when I say your offer, I mean that broadly in terms of what is the next step that you want someone to take on their customer journey with you.
So, okay, content marketing is getting attention. And I think the thing that I'm wondering about is I see a lot of people saying, well, I'm creating content. Right. And what I want to talk about is what is the difference between this kind of feeling of being on the hamster wheel of creating content and then actually using it in a strategic marketing way where it actually does that work of getting the eyeballs on your offer.
Yeah. So I think the key to that is order of operations, right? Because if people just start creating content and they don't actually have a strategy, they don't have a plan, then that's when it gets to be exhausting. I mean, it's already a lot of work, right? So you might as well know that the work is going to pay off at some point. So if you reverse that and you start with your offer, right? So my offer is Content Bootcamp. And then if you look at your offer and you say, okay, what do people need to believe and understand in order to have the mindset to purchase this offer and to succeed with it, right? Because it's a boot camp, so they actually have to be willing to do some work, right? So then from there, I think, okay, what is it that people have to understand or believe? And then that gives me the ideas for, okay, this is the content I need to write to move people along this beliefs chain to be able to purchase this. And so then when you're looking at your content, you're also looking at the customer journey, which you've mapped out. Like that's what we do in marketing intensives is we help people map out their customer journey. And you're saying like, oh, people at this stage of the journey who know nothing about what it is that we do need this content so that they understand like, this is the problem, right? Maybe they're problem unaware. So we need content at the beginning of the funnel to make them problem aware. Then in the middle of the funnel, it's like maybe they're problem aware, but they don't know that there's a solution or they don't know what the solution is. So then we need content to make them solution aware, and not just solution aware, but like, yes, we have the solution and we can implement it for you. And then towards the bottom of the funnel, then it's like, hey, what's holding you back from buying? Let's get your questions answered, right? Maybe it's they're comparing, they're comparing you to some of your competitors or whatever that is, right? Or they don't understand. A lot of times for me, a lot of my sort of bottom of funnel content is really about making people understand the cost of inaction, because it's usually not like, oh, they're thinking of going with someone else. It's usually that they're following me and I'm on some kind of vision board and they're like, doing what I call cleaning before the cleaner comes. Well, I don't want it to seem like I'm a mess. So let me get my stuff together and then go. And it's like, whew, man, so the strategy part is huge because you need to understand what's the purpose of your content. Where are you trying to move people to? Where are they on the journey? And then what do you need to put in front of them to keep them moving to the next step?
I love that answer. So if somebody is at the point that they need to figure this out on their own, they're trying to figure out what people are asking and what they need at different points in the buyer's journey, where can they get that kind of information?
Well, the best way to get it is by serving your clients, right? Like hopefully you have some clients at this point. And so it's really a matter of paying attention, right? At every step of the customer journey. So it's what questions are people in your audience asking? And then it's what questions are your clients asking? And that gives me, if you listen to season 3 of my podcast, I call it the law and order strategy, because it was basically ripped from the headlines. Like this season was all planned in advance and, mapped out. And last season, for reasons I was just like, oh, I need to record, like what's going on. And then it's put my ear to the ground and go, so it's a listening skill. It's like listening to your audience, listening to your, followers on social media, listening to people in the Facebook groups that you're in who are potential, clients who qualify for your service. And also asking, like, you can just ask people straight up, like, hey, what's frustrating to you about this, like about this thing that you solve, or what do you wish you'd known about, for me, it's like everybody has that story that they hired a developer and got ghosted, or they didn't get the result that they wanted, or, all kinds of service providers. Right. And I talk a lot about that. It's because nobody's taking care of the strategy, right? Nobody, developers and designers are not notorious for being good marketers, right? They're really good at executing their craft, but somebody has to be in charge of the strategy. So I talk a lot about like mistakes that people make, and actually have a resource that when you get the pot of gold, it's in there. It's the 10-minute guide to profitable content. And so it walks you through like kind of that matrix of doing, 10 topics that you want to be known for, or that you think your audience should know. And then 10 subtopics under that. And that's 100 ideas. Like I used to walk clients through that as part of our work together. And in 90 minutes, we'd come up with 100 ideas, no problem. So that's really where you get it, is by like putting your ear to the ground and listening really hard.
I got to tell you, that exercise is like the pot of gold inside the pot of gold. It's seriously, it is so good. And questions like the ones you just gave an example of that is actually how I found you. You asked a question like that on Facebook, and I started to see all the answers, and it was a really interesting conversation. And you added a link to this amazing product that blew my mind, answered my dreams and all that kind of stuff. And that's how I found you. So that it's such a simple thing. And I think people don't do it enough.
Marketing's gotten so complex that people see what like established, mature marketers are doing. And they think, oh, that's what I have to get to right out of the gate. And really what you have to be able to do right out of the gate is talk to people, ask questions, listen to their problems, answer their questions, offer solutions, like make your pitch, like tell people like, I'm kind of famous for like answering questions with links, and that's because of the pot of gold. It's because people have questions, and I've created content about, everything under the sun at this point. And so I will just pop in there and I'll be like, oh, I know I have this resource, and I'll go get it, and I'll grab a link. So it's fine for the solutions or the answers to people's questions to be like, here's my offer. I help people solve this, and I do it for money. Right. And a lot of people, I think, skip over making that pitch because they're like, I don't want to seem salesy. But I'm like, if people have the problem that you solve, then tell them that you solve it and let them know how they can buy it.
Absolutely. And it's funny, marketing has become so complex. At the same time, though, it's so much easier now to have those two-way conversations than it was when I started out in the marketing world, because there's a lot of interconnectedness. I mean, to state the obvious, right? So it is pretty easy to listen and hear what people are wondering. And then to, like you said, just to ask them directly.
Yeah. Don't die wondering is the thing I say all the time.
When we talk about content repurposing, because this is one of the things that your tool really makes easy, is to repurpose content and to still sort of stay on topic. Because I think that's one of the things that I see people struggle with is they have this core topic, but then they sort of wander off in a lot of different directions. And sometimes they end up, down this rabbit hole that's not even related to their core topic. So when it comes to content repurposing, how can we use our core content? How can we ensure that we stay on topic and ensure that all of that repurposed content is still driving people back to our offers?
So I'm gonna steal this answer from my podcast producer, Angie Jordan, and other people I know who do this also, because we just actually today is the release of season 4 of my podcast, Begin As You Mean to Go On. So that is the pillar, right? Our podcast is the pillar of our marketing strategy. And so you can take that episode and you can take the transcript and you can use that to create a blog post about the episode. You can take the clips and create audiograms, and you can put those on your social media to drive people to the episode. You can take quotes and you can make, quote posts, or you can take snippets and you can make reels. All of these things driven from this single piece of content. And that's how you can stay focused is, okay, I'm going to take this thing and now I'm going to remix it into all these other formats to drive people back to this thing, right? So you're driving people back to the podcast. The podcast drives people to, if they want to work with us, go on over to the link and, come apply to work with us. So I think if you have something like that, so if you don't like to do audio, you can do YouTube, like you have a great YouTube channel. If you don't like those formats, blog posts are still a thing. People are still searching on the internet for the answers to their problems, and your blog post could be that answer. And the thing about it is, if you don't have that content out there, then you're not part of the conversation because you're not searchable.
Okay. Oh my gosh. It's so simple what you just said, but that bears repeating. Like, if you don't have content out there, you're not part of the conversation. And that is why we have to figure out, who are we going to, what is our core topic going to be online? And what are we going to make sure everything revolves around? So if someone is trying to figure out what they should use as pillar content, what they're going to start with and create as their main content piece that they will then snip into little pieces and use to repurpose, how do you guide them toward figuring out what their pillar content should be? You said, if you don't like to do this, do that. But do you have any more guidance on how to figure that out?
So it's always a Venn diagram of what can you actually produce, right? If getting on video terrifies you, right? I love business because it's always an opportunity for personal growth, right? So I will push my clients to push their growth edges into, video or audio. So that's worth doing. But if it's just terrifying to you and you hate it, then it's not going to be sustainable long-term, right? So you have to think about, what are the ways that I actually want to be showing up? And whatever way it is, there's someone out there who is showing up that way successfully. So whether that's, podcast or TikTok or, whatever it is, or blog posts, there's a way that people are doing it. So you have to pick what you can show up for long-term, and you have to commit to that process. And then there's another section to that, which is the pillar content, right? If we're talking about, SEO, there's this concept of pillar content that is like, okay, this is my stake in the ground on this. And it's usually a quite in-depth coverage of whatever topic it is. And then you can spin off from that into other subtopics. And so that's another version of pillar content, is thinking about like, what's the topic of your pillar content? I had a client who wanted to use GoDaddy as their host, and I was having so many problems. And I literally spent, I think, 5 hours doing something that would have taken me 15 minutes on a different. And so I just got so fed up with that I was like, I'm never doing this again. And I wrote a big, long article. I was like, why I hate GoDaddy and you shouldn't use it, or why I don't use GoDaddy and you shouldn't either. And that is still to this day, it's the most visited page on my website, for good or ill. It really hit a chord with people. And so it drives a ton of traffic to my site.
You are doing God's work, Kronda Adair. Thank you for your service to humanity.
Yeah, I think it has so much traffic because other developers are sending it to their clients going like, see, no, we shouldn't do this. But, when you feel strongly about something like that, or you see a mistake that people are making over and over again, like, oh, if only people would stop doing, that's a great clue that should be some pillar content for you.
Okay, I love that. So pillar content is really about listening to the core problems that people are they're stumbling with. So in your 10 by 10 process, the pillar content is one of those 10 things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It doesn't have to be all 10 of them, but within that, you're probably going to be like, ooh, this is a hot button. So, I mean, even the pot of gold itself, right? One of my sort of hills that I'm going to die on is you have to treat your content like an asset. And I think that was probably the topic of the post that you originally found, was like, stop putting your emails only into MailChimp or ConvertKit or ActiveCampaign, and they don't live anywhere else. Because if those things go down, if your account gets shut down, if you decide you want to move to another platform, poof, that like, yeah, you can get it. You can't just do like an easy, like, oh, I'm going to export this as a CSV. Like, you would have to go in and painstakingly copy and paste all of that stuff out, if you don't want to lose it. And so it's like, hey, let's put this somewhere else, right? That's easy to get to, that's easy to organize, that's easily searchable. I'm always thinking like, can I pick up my toys and go home? Right. Anytime I'm looking at software. So that's why the pot of gold exists is in part because people need to, if you had a physical store and you were selling physical stuff, you would take inventory and you would want to know where that stuff is and where, like, how much got sold. And so if your content is an asset, I have put posts on Facebook that made me $10,000.
Wow.
I want to know I want to know that when I'm not in that Facebook group anymore, I still have that content, right?
Yeah.
I can put that content somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. That's so smart. And I think about that all the time. And you're right. That is the post that I responded to. And you probably remember because you have a record, because it's in your pot of gold. But that's the one I responded to. And I have thought many times, I spend hours putting together this email content. And then it goes out and that's it. Like,
yep. And then I've been doing 30% open rate and then it's dead. Like, no.
Right. And that's it. Right. And so, and people respond, people you see, for example, you put something on Facebook, it gets a lot of comments, you send out an email, it gets a lot of responses, or like you said, it sells an offer that you have, and you don't want to forget that. It's really important to have that captured somewhere so that you can then reuse it. I mean, my emails could be reused on Facebook. I could create YouTube videos around the email content, all of that. And when you have that record of it, that's when you can start to see that asset aspect of your content, right?
Yeah. And I love the process. I have some clients in boot camp who I think about halfway through, because at first it's like we're getting them clarity about what what their messaging should actually be. And so they start putting stuff out, and then they start getting a response, and then they start going, oh, I need to save this. Right. And then they start paying attention. Right. And they set up their pot of gold. So there's been a lot of wins posted lately, like, oh, I was about to do this thing and I was going to log into ConvertKit, but then I remembered it's over my pot of gold and it took me 2 seconds. And then they get excited and then they're like, ooh, what else can I put in here? And I love to see that light switch go on, because that's, a lot of people buy it. And like all of us, it's like you buy a thing with the best of intentions and then it sits around. But the magic is when you actually start to use it, you get your stuff in there, you start saving time, you start answering those questions, really quickly for people. And then you get hooked. And that's when it like all bets are off.
On first glance, you're like, oh, it's a really attractive spreadsheet. No, it is so much more than a spreadsheet. It is amazing. And I love that you ended up using that tool at the time that I was dreaming up something like this. I don't think Airtable even existed. So, yeah, I'm really so thrilled that you put this together. And so excited that it plugs into a larger ecosystem that you have figured out about how to help people to really make the most of their content. I so appreciate you talking to us all about it. So if people want to find you online, what is the best place to find you?
So the best place is just to go over to carveldigital.com. I'm Carvel Digital on all the social platforms that we're on. So yeah. And the Service CEOs group is where I hang out the most. And that's our Facebook group. So if you go to carveldigital.com/CEO, it will just magically port you over to the Facebook group and you can join there.
Awesome. So especially for people who have service-based businesses, it sounds like that's someplace they want to be, right?
Absolutely.
Kronda Adair, thank you so much for joining us on the Online Business Expert Series. I so appreciate it. We're going to put so many links down in the description. So if you're watching this, be sure to check out the description, because there are going to be some great resources down there that you can check out. And I just so appreciate you figuring this out and putting this together and sort of beating the drum of using content like an asset so that people really take advantage of all that intellectual property that they're generating over the years. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.